board. Okay. As you know, I have to read the right to know script. That's the first thing that I will do. So I am here with regard to the Advisory Council on Pregnancy and Lactation. And I am going to now make the comments required to do by the right to know law. I, Martha Fuller Clark, Senator, find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe, and listening contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that 1, we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Advisory Council and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom, YouTube, or via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the information in the Senate calendar. 3, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-3043. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And finally, I will start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each mayor states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting. This is required under the state to know law. So I will now call the roll. Paula Oliveria.
Here, and I'm home with no one in the room.
Thank you. Kate Frederick. You need to unmute.
Hi, Senator. I am home in Stratford, Vermont, and it's possible my 8-year-old might walk into the room.
Right. Sherry Stevens.
I am here. I'm in my home office and I'm alone.
Thank you. Lisa Soros.
Hi, good morning. I'm here. I have a child at home doing remote school.
Thank you. Rebecca Perkins-Coca.
Yes, I'm here at 1 Crockett's Way in Stratham, which is my mom's house with my mom and my 1-year-old.
Great. Nicole?
I'm here. I have 2 children doing remote learning, but they're in another room.
Thank you so very much. Marissa? Laura Marissa?
Yes, Marisa Lada's here. I'm in Raymond and my kids are here. They're 2 and 4.
Great. You all are doing yeoman service by having to deal with the coronavirus and homeschooling or parenting your children and working at the same time. So I really want to thank you for doing that. The purpose of this meeting today is principally to discuss the legislation that unfortunately was not able to be passed last year that I filed on behalf of this advisory council. And I know that in the interim that Rebecca has reached out to you and has agreed to submit this legislation again this year. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I have two questions. One is the advisory council in agreement that we should drop the tax credit component of this bill? We saw what happened when it went to finance in the Senate last year, that finance didn't like the tax credit. And what they agreed to do was to send the bill back to the Senate.
Oh, Senator, you've muted yourself.
Okay, how long was I muted for?
Just for a couple seconds there.
Okay, great, thanks, Jen. So it was scheduled to come back to the Senate to remove that component of the legislation and then to send it on to the House. Unfortunately, sadly, that the shutdown of the legislature prevented that from happening. So the bill just did not advance. And as you know, therefore, needs to be refiled this year. And then the second question that I have is regarding to the need to reach out to the BIA if and what the position of the advisory council is on doing that, and whether or not, Rebecca, you have been able to have a conversation with Dave Juvet. So let's first discuss about the credit. And
I'm in favor of dropping the credit.
Okay, I need to ask Paula if you could take, as you have so generously done in the past, take some minutes for this meeting.
Sure, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt, Senator. Speaking of the minutes as well, we did send out minutes that we received from Paula last night for the two previous meetings. I'm not sure if you wanted to take a vote on those today or give people some more time to review them.
So Jen, I think those meetings are for the child hunger.
Oh, sorry. Did I send them to the wrong group?
You may have.
Think so.
You are correct. Sorry, getting confused about my commissions.
Don't worry, it's all right. Life is confusing enough. Okay, so I think the last minutes that I have are from, let's see, October 22nd, 2019. And that's really the last time I believe that the council met. You can stand corrected, but that's what I'm willing to stand corrected, but that's what I have in my file. And it's really when we made the final decisions about submitting the legislation. So no, November 19th. I'm sorry, I have minutes for November 19th.
I have
Right.
some January 10th meeting minutes.
You do?
Yep.
Okay, so if we could send those all to everyone, if they don't have them, and I'll make sure that they're added here. But that then was the last time that the council met. So
Just forwarded them to everybody, Senator.
great, thank you. Sorry, they're not in my notebook here. Anyway, so Lisa, let's come back to your
Could I
comment.
actually ask a question before we get into sort of the nitty gritty of the legislation?
Yeah.
What is the life of this advisory council? Is it coming to an end? I feel like that's going to help drive where we go with this legislation and who is going to work on it together. And I don't really know what's happening with this council. Will there be a report?
Yes,
Does it sunset?
I will file a report, but let me just check. I meant to look at that ahead. I do not believe, Jen, can you also look?
So, Senator, the legislation repeals itself for the council on December 1st of 2020.
Of 2020, okay.
So it's repealed in a few weeks here.
Okay, so we can, Rebecca can submit legislation to extend the council. and that needs to be a different a discussion that we need to have. If you wish the advisory council to continue, we would need to submit legislation to extend it, and it wouldn't be able to meet formally until that legislation was passed. And I guess one of the questions would be, would you like it reauthorized for 2 years, for 4 years, or not at all?
I would ask the question, if I may, Senator, what the members of this commission view as the role going forward. If it's to help support the legislation, then perhaps it's useful to renew. If the time of these members is better spent directly supporting the legislation through testimony or meetings, then let's do that. But I would welcome input on what you'd like to do, and I'm happy to submit the legislation that we need. I also just wanted to make a quick note that Senator-elect Rebecca Whitley is on as well, listening, and that her and I intend to submit whatever legislation is needed on this topic together for this session.
Thanks. So let me just explain that if it's the will of this council to resubmit legislation to reauthorize the council for an additional amount of time, it will have to wind its way through the Senate and then through the House. So the council could not meet again as a council until that bill has been heard and passed. It doesn't mean that it will limit your participation as individuals and working with Rebecca to testify and drive the pending bill forward during the next legislative session. So is that helpful?
Yeah, that is helpful.
I guess the question would be perhaps discussing remember that the duties of the council were to examine best practices on behalf of pregnant women and lactating mothers in New Hampshire, to research availability of accommodations and support for lactating mothers in public arenas, including but not limited to transportation hubs, educational institutions, government buildings, courts, and correctional facilities, to review definitions of sex discrimination and disparate treatment related to pregnancy and lactation on federal and state levels in order to consider amendments to existing statutes, and to review federal and state definitions of reasonable accommodations and clarify definitions for state laws as related to pregnancy and lactation accommodations, and to clarify that lactation is a medical condition related to pregnancy. And also the duty was to review the history of pregnancy and lactation legislations in New Hampshire. So that what was laid out for the council when this bill was passed in 2 years ago. Well, further than that, in 17, right? And so there is ongoing directives of duties that go beyond just relating to the particular piece of legislation that would be being brought forward this year on behalf of the council. And so again, I just wanted to remind you the duties of the council, and perhaps if you wish to have legislation filed individually, you could work with Rebecca to see if you want to amend those duties in any way. And if you want to look at those individuals that have been designated to serve on that council, and if there need to be additions or deletions going forward for the membership of the council. So if that's helpful, I think, Paul, you can just make sure that that listing of duties is included in the minutes and will be distributed to everyone. My own feeling is that there continues to be issues about pregnancy and lactation, and that we continue to see, for instance, women who have been nursing in public to have been discriminated against. And I know, Kate, you may have some other issues that you would like to draw to the attention of those on this meeting this morning.
Nothing specific at the moment. I'm a direct access nutrition rights in the workplace advocate. So I think I've been clear about that in past meetings, but I haven't met everybody here at this meeting. So
Right, so let me
leave
just
it at that.
ask you one other question, Kate. I mean, basically, this advisory council was your concept. And could you just speak to whether or not you believe there's a role for this council to continue beyond this year?
Yeah, I would want to give that some thought and sort of reassess. I think maybe even just doing a quick survey that I could distribute over how members feel if this was effective or not.
Sure.
Certainly there continue to be issues, absolutely. And I think the question would be, do we want to continue with this format?
Okay, so
Thank you for asking.
I hope this has been a helpful conversation, and I will leave it in the hands of the new Senator-elect Quokka to resolve how you might move forward vis-a-vis continuing the life of the council or not. But before we do that, I just want to make sure, does anyone else wish to comment at this time about what your thoughts are?
Yes, I do.
I do too.
Okay, Lisa.
So I would just like to share, I'm representing the Department of Health and Human Services on this group, and we have been really active over the past couple of years in continuing to do workplace support education and putting out mini grants across the state. So we're also a member of the New Hampshire Breastfeeding Task Force that has been really active in having conversations and relationships around bringing legislation forward again. And so I think this council has been incredible for the purpose that it served. We did a really good job putting some bones together for legislation and made new relationships that were interested in breastfeeding to work together, that have continued to meet and have conversation through the pandemic without having these council meetings available to us. And so, I think this is just for me, that the council has served its purpose, and I'm excited to continue to work with Senator Quokka and Senator Whitley and the Business and Industry Association. And so I think our time would be better served continuing to provide education and support to the workplace community in the discussion of legislation, as opposed to having the council meetings.
Great. And one thing you might be able to say is that the task force would also be able to be a convening framework to bring everybody together. So this is everyone agree that this is no longer necessary. But I am pleased with the work that we have done and with the high participation to resolve some of the issues. So I think we have a very positive piece of legislation moving forward. I'm disappointed that it wasn't able to take place on my watch, but I know that I'm turning it over to some very able women. So I'm excited about that. Sherry, did you want to speak?
Yes, I just thought, just looking back at the the purpose of the advisory committee that you stated, it seems to me that there's potential work there, and I know that we've been doing all this work around the legislation, and that will continue outside of this council. But just it felt to me that if we kept the council going and were able to sort of reconvene once it goes through the legislation and decide on a purpose and see if there was a purpose moving forward, or at least having it in place in case something came up, that we would already have it in place and be able to convene and do that work. So I was thinking that it was a valuable thing to have, whether or not it was particularly active. I don't know if it has any, limits are like, I know our council has to meet 4 times a year. Sometimes they have a limit, sometimes they don't. And so just checking in periodically, or maybe having a group get together if a purpose came up. So I was in favor of keeping it, just sort of having it in the background in case we needed it. But it depends on if people want to continue or not.
Okay, and so I would think that as you continue this conversation would be to look at how you might draft it, perhaps to assure that there's a networking opportunity between different interest groups who are concerned about this, or whether or not the task force can provide that or another mechanism. You will have to stipulate in the legislation as it goes forward, at least, is it once a year? Or maybe you give it a different name so that everybody can sort of have a check-in. I think just how that might be drafted will take some additional conversation and thought. So thank you. Is anyone else wishing to speak at this time regarding the life of the council? Okay, I hope, Rebecca, that provides you with some framework to continue the conversation. And now what I think we need to do is move on to the actual legislation that's going to be filed, and to find out, and perhaps it would be good to take a roll call vote on whether or not you wish to eliminate the tax credit, and if there are any other minor changes to the language in the legislation that need to be considered. So Lisa, why don't you go first?
Sure. So there has been a lot of work that has continued around the language of potential legislation for our state over the last 6 to 9 months. And so it does feel like the tax credit piece could be dropped. We've had some great conversations with the Business and Industry Association, and as well as we've continued to do some research around the purpose of a tax credit. And while we thought it was an innovative piece to add last year, it created more questions than maybe we wanted it to do. And so I do think at this time it doesn't add any value, but just complicates it.
Are there any minor changes to the bill other than that you would recommend in drafting it going forward?
Yeah, we do have a bunch of suggested edits that we would like to bring forward if the council decides to continue to meet. The task force has continued to meet and work around the legislation language, and so we do have some ideas.
So I would assume that you will, I know you've already met once with Rebecca, that you would provide her with the revised language going forward, and that she'll be able to implement that in the draft that she submits to legislative services. So then what I'd like to do is have a roll call vote that we all agree that the tax credit be eliminated. And I think certainly in light of what we're seeing with the budget challenges going forward, but Kate has something to say. Yes. Kate.
For some reason, we can't hear you, even though it looks like you're unmuted.
Now we can hear you, I think. Try again.
Okay, can you read the bill out loud? It's short, right?
No, it's not short.
Okay, can it be read out loud though?
I think given that there are going to be changes, that it really doesn't behoove to do that right now. I think we can send you, make sure that you have a copy of the bill as it was submitted last year. And then also make sure that Rebecca will send you the revised language so that you have that. And if you have any suggestions, I would suggest that you submit them to Rebecca.
Does it exclude breastfeeding? Does the bill exclude breastfeeding?
Yes. it just deals with lactation, and it deals, and what it does do is the major thrust of the legislation was to require access to, so that it gave some more flexibility to businesses so that each business didn't have to provide lactation space. But perhaps let's say that you had a number of small businesses that were in a mall, that there would be one place where people could go, okay? So that's just one example, but saying that a business has to assure that a lactating mom would be able to have access to lactating rooms and all that goes with that.
So, you know, with the New Hampshire Breastfeeding Rights Coalition, we wouldn't support a bill that excludes breastfeeding because we think that's sex discrimination.
Well, I think we know, and you can pursue this, but we ran up against huge opposition from the business community against breastfeeding in the businesses. So that's certainly something for further discussion, but that's the
Right.
compromise that we worked out in 2019, and we wanted to make sure that we could at least move something forward successfully.
Okay, so are we voting on whether or not we support this bill or whether or not we?
No, we're just voting on removing the language regarding the tax credit.
Okay, well, I just want to be on record that I wouldn't support this bill. I would testify against it.
Okay. And I'm sure that Rebecca will continue to reach out to you. Okay, so anyone else have comments that they'd like to make before I have the roll call?
Senator, I just wanted to request that Jennifer maybe connect me with all of these members via email so that I can have their input and we can work together directly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely happy to do so, Senator-elect.
Thank you so much.
So with regard to the roll call, is it clear what we're voting on? We're voting on eliminating the tax credit for any bill that goes forward with regard to providing access to lactation facilities in the workplace. Okay, Paula.
I agree.
You need to state your name, I think, and your
Okay.
vote.
Oh, no, Senator, all you have to do is call their name and they can say yes or no. And you'll be
Okay, Paula Oliveri.
I agree with eliminating the tax piece of the bill.
Okay.
And this is Paul.
Oh, great. Sherry Stevens,
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Marissa,
Yes.
myself, yes. Kate Frederick.
Abstain.
Okay, great. So we had one abstention and everyone else voted in favor. So the tax credit will be eliminated from any legislation that's brought forward. So then just Rebecca, could you bring us up to date if you have had any one-on-one conversations with Dave Gervais that you could share with this group at this time?
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to go to another call in a few minutes, but I was able to speak.
I think we're almost finished, so.
I got that sense. I just want to let you know. I was able to speak to Dave Gervais yesterday about the bill. He mentioned to me, Lisa, that the bill will be presented in committee of the BIA on Friday. He expected discussion to open around 8:45. So I'm hoping to be able to join you for that via Zoom. I have a funeral service that starts at 10, so I'm going to be on for as long as I can that morning. He recommended dropping the tax credit, which we just did. And then the only other thing he mentioned, which may be in the edits that you're going to share with me, but I also was going to raise, is just the size of employer. It might create a little tension to try and go as small as 6 employees. And he mentioned the federal law, may have a floor of 50 employees. So we both felt that obviously that was way too high of of a floor, but maybe there's some room to discuss the number of employees in the revised bill. But other than that, I'm happy to support you in your work preparing for Friday if I can.
So Lisa, could you talk about how we came up with 6? That it's based on other federal requirements, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe Danielle, who was representing the Department of Labor on this council, had made that recommendation so that it was consistent with other New Hampshire discrimination law.
So just, I think it wasn't random that's the piece that was in the bill. And Danielle's not with us today. Is there someone taking Danielle's place?
There is Lexi Rojas from the Department of Labor.
Okay. So again, I think just having an explanation from the Department of Labor as to why that seems to be the best recommendation going forward might be helpful.
I can put something together, Senator.
Thank you very, very much. Whose is this with this number? Who's speaking?
Oh, Lexi Rojas, the Department of Labor.
Okay, and did you answer the initial roll call?
I wasn't sure. I was having technical difficulties. I could hear the roll call. I was talking. I was having issues with the microphone at the time.
Okay, so,
but I have been here present since the beginning.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we add you to the attendance. So could you just state your name and tell us where you are and if you're with anyone else?
Certainly. Lexi Rojas, I'm at the Department of Labor and I'm alone in my office.
Thank you so very, very much. Okay. Is there any other business at this? Hey, yes.
The employees are 6. That's because of the New Hampshire Commission on Human Rights discrimination law. That is, the floor for that is 6 employees or more. And so that's where that language comes from. I think it's 354A.
Okay. And let me just add, I mean, it's one of the reasons why we said access, so that those smaller businesses could be able to figure out a way to provide access and they would not have to provide it themselves. So I think that's what's important to point out with the discussion with the BIA, that we feel that in order to be in harmony with our state laws and our federal laws, that we should keep the language more than 6 employees, but that they themselves do not have to provide the space. They just have to find a way to provide access.
Right. And if you were to present this bill and it took away protections from current state law, then it would be found invalid.
Great. Okay. Anything else that you all wish to bring up at this time?
I have a question for you, Senator. I noticed that there is already an LSR submitted under Representative Abel. And so I was wondering if someone from this council maybe brought that forward to him, or if there's any information to share that supports that.
Kate, I have not seen that. We just saw the title. I don't know what's in that bill. Kate, you have some information?
Yes. So last January of this year, I have my lawsuit is still ongoing against Health and Human Services for breastfeeding discrimination. And it was in the US News World Report. And shortly after that article came out, Senator Fuller Clark asked me to provide her with language for a new bill that included breastfeeding and didn't exclude it. And she had a bill drafted with much more language than the bill we're talking about today. And after it was drafted, she had it pulled for various reasons. So that is now the bill that went on to Representative Abel. And he has been the prime sponsor of it. And that's the language that he used. He made one amendment to it. I haven't fully reviewed it yet. So it's basically a bill that Senator Fuller Clark drafted back in January.
Okay, but the reason I pulled that bill is I ran into a huge amount of opposition, particularly from the Human Rights Commission, and it just didn't make sense to go forward. So I think it will be important to see how that language has been changed and to have some conversation, perhaps Representative Abel with the Human Rights Commission to find out where they're coming from. And I hope that also that language can be shared with everyone that is currently on the council. The council doesn't expire until December 2nd. And so if you can get that language for us to Jen, she will share that with all the members of the council.
Yes, I've asked Rep. Abel to reach out to you, Senator Fuller Clark, before he started it.
I haven't heard from him at all.
Okay.
Just to let you know, but there were some really major concerns, and since it came in at the very last minute, it just didn't make sense. We wanted to keep our focus on the access to lactation.
Well, our stance with the Breastfeeding Rights Coalition is that lactation includes breastfeeding and expressing milk, which I know everybody knows that's how we view it. Also, after that article had come out after the hearing, Senator Bradley also asked me to provide him with language for a bill. So he had submitted a pregnancy rights bill, which did pass the Senate, but because of COVID didn't make it into the House and was delayed. So I haven't heard back from him yet what his intentions are with that. But Governor Sununu had testified at that first hearing in the Senate, which didn't provide any actual accommodation provisions. It just stated that pregnancy discrimination is illegal, which is pretty much already stated under federal law and also under the Human Rights Commission law. But this was to make it more explicit. So I can follow up with the council, with Senator Bradley as well. And
Great.
the senators elect as well, both of them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is that helpful? That previous conversation, that current conversation. So you've got that information as well to work forward with. I just like to thank all of you. It has been really my privilege to have worked with all of you, and I feel that a lot of good work was done, and I think that we're putting forth a bill that is significant, and I will do all that I can to help you get it passed. And I think we should also just recognize that we now have a nursing unit that is in the legislative office building, and that we have an agreement from the facilities that they're also working on creating a space when they revise the facilities in the State House, so that those are other successes that we can point to during this time. So with that, I wish you all a great Thanksgiving. I hope you will stay safe and just stay with your immediate families. And a really good holiday time in this very, very bizarre moment and concerning moment that we're in. So thank you. And with that, I will.
Senator, I just want to say thank you for your leadership too. You've been a really incredible breastfeeding champion for our state. So thank you. And I would say we're in good hands. So we'll keep the work going.
You and Rebecca will stay in touch with me to let me know what else I can do to be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Senator, I just wanted to, ditto that as well, because we all know that this has been many, many years of you championing this. So we all appreciate it from the New Hampshire Breastfeeding Task Force. Thank you.
I'll miss you all.
have to take a roll call to adjourn. Sorry.
Great. Okay, we have to do that roll call one more time. All right. We're doing a roll call, motion to adjourn. Paula,
Yes, agree.
Kate,
Goodbye.
you have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Sherry,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Rebecca, you're not really a voting member, sorry. Nicole,
Yes.
Marissa,
Yes.
and our representative from Labor, right?
Lexi, yes.
Lexi, sorry, I just don't have your name.
Okay.
Okay, so, and I vote yes, and with that, we will now adjourn. Thank you all.